Okay, so the title makes this sound a little more dramatic than it actually was, but this was still one of the craziest things I have ever experienced. It is kind of long, so sorry in advance. Feel free to cut this down. I'm a creative writing major. Sue me. For some backstory, my mom and her sister grew up across the field from two boys. We live in a small city in Montana, so they grew up playing with chickens and swimming in the river. My mom went on to have my little sister, N, and me, F, and one of the boys had twins, J and B. The twins' grandparents still live across the field from my grandma, so we grew up with each other, spending hours and hours together outside in the fields or down by the river when they'd come visit each summer. Now, I've always had a spooky soul, so when I saw an Ouija board at a local oddities shop, my wheels started turning. At the time, I was probably 14 or 15, and my sister was 11-ish. For reference, the twins are my age. Being broke high schoolers, we decided not to purchase the Ouija board, but to, well, make our own. We returned to their grandparents' house, immediately fetched some cardstock, markers, and a little bit of Scotch tape. Before our silly teenage brains could process the weight of what we were doing, the board was made. We justified making it with the following sentiment. They say not to do it in your own house, but none of us technically lived in their grandparents' house, so it should be fine, right? We got some salt from upstairs to make a salt ring, which we painstakingly laid out on a towel so we didn't get any in the basement carpet. None of us are very religious, I'd say spiritual at most, so we Googled a protection prayer and Jay read it aloud. And just like that, the four of us put a finger on our DIY planchette, and we were off. I honestly don't remember much about what happened in the basement, aside from talking to a few people, the first two of which identified themselves with initials instead of full names, and a woman whose name I can't seem to recall. They were nice enough, I guess, but all three of them warned about some sort of darker energy on the premise. Like I said, I don't remember a whole lot about it, but I remember we heard a noise and got a little scared. We decided that we were done doing it in the basement after that. Being the silly young people we were, we got freaked out and decided to pause for a little bit. We always made sure to say goodbye, but we were really creeped out by this darker entity. The way the other spirits talked about it made it almost seem like it was controlling them or had them trapped. We took a break, but something about the board kept calling us back. Later, we went out into the backyard. It was a beautiful sunny day, but we were shrouded by the shadow cast by the house. Against my little sister's better judgment, which honestly we should have listened to, we got the board back out, and before we knew it, we had contacted something. She said her name was Susan, and eventually we found out that she was a nun. We asked where she'd come from, and she said Sydney. We weren't sure if this meant Sydney, Australia, but then B chimed in. Wait, there's a town in Montana called Sydney. We asked if that was what she meant, and she confirmed. This is where things take a turn. We asked her if she's the evil spirit that the other spirits had mentioned. Regretfully, she was. And we started to get scared. My sister wanted nothing but to be done, but my strong-headed friends and I kept pushing it further and further. We started asking about her life, and I think we asked how she passed away, all of which you're not supposed to do. Eventually, one of us asked where she worked, or something related to that, and she spelled out a bunch of random letters. Confused, we tried again. Same thing. Weird string of letters that looked a little too much like a real word to dismiss. So this point, we're freaked out and ready to be done. We said goodbye immediately and flipped the Ouija board over, too frightened to even look at the thing. While it was still fresh in my mind, I quickly opened the browser on the old Samsung my dad had given me at the start of the pandemic. I typed in the letters and hit send. My skin erupted into goosebumps. Somehow, in a way that defies logic, the letters turned out to be the name of a church in Norway. Remember how she had said she was a nun, and how would any of us, 3 high school freshmen and 6th grader, know the name of a Norwegian church? It's possible that my friends were pranking us, but I've never seen them look so scared, and I've known them since I was 3 years old. So my friends and I are done by this point. My little sister is white as a ghost. We say goodbye, forbid anything from following us, and promptly burned the Ouija board. We didn't know that you weren't supposed to do this until afterward, but I digress. It's been 5 years since then, and thankfully, nothing seems to have followed us. But that day taught me a lesson that I'll never forget. You never know what you're dealing with. Who knows what's on the other side of the veil? And who knows who or what is trying to get onto our side? And one more thing. It could have just been a scam call, but I recently got a phone call from an unknown number from Sydney, Montana. Normally I don't answer spam calls unless it's to do so in a Russian accent to mess with them. But for some reason, I answered this one. There was nothing on the other line. In 2018, my friend's girlfriend and her roommate both wanted to sublease their apartment. Their explanation was simply that they were moving one town over. I was actively apartment hunting at that time, and I really loved the apartment layout and the neighborhood. The same night I found out they wanted to sublease, I agreed to take over the apartment and even got a roommate secured. The next day, I went over to the apartment to talk logistics of the swap. At one point, the roommate of my friend's girlfriend mentioned they frequently heard banging in the kitchen, cabinet doors slamming shut, and appliances on the counters moving. My friend's girlfriend looked at her and said, "Shut the up," while giving her that look of, "What are you doing?" I simply didn't take it serious. I had been to the apartment for parties multiple times and never got a bad vibe. A week later, I moved in with my friend and her girlfriend. So, 3 of us living together. I don't remember how soon it was. After we moved in, that scary shit started happening. But we had incidents several times a week for all 12 months. I have a Labrador who was 7 at the time. I've had him since he was a puppy, so I was very familiar with his normal behavior. While in this apartment, he would growl while staring at areas that were dark. He growled at dark corners a lot while we were there. It wasn't neighbors or anything. When we were in the living room, we would hear kitchen cabinets slamming shut and the sound of things moving around on the kitchen counters. I usually left my bedroom door open. When we would be cooking in the kitchen, we would hear what sounded like someone slapping the hangers in my closet. I usually had the closet door open too. That experience happened at least once or twice a week. There was a time we came home and found just about everything in our living room moved around. I like to keep things neat and in their place. That's how the apartment was when we left, but when we came home, it literally looked like someone was hanging out on the couch playing video games. Nothing was missing, so we didn't think someone broke in. We called the 2 girls that lived there before, but they hadn't been over and gave us the only keys. There was a night I was laying on the couch watching TV. The only light on was the hallway light. I saw a tall, dark shadow walk across the hallway entrance, moving towards my bedroom. I slept on the couch that night because of how creeped out I was. There was a night I was asleep in my room, and I was woken up by my dog growling at the closet. There was a full moon that night, so the room was lit up pretty well. He started with a light growl that gradually got louder. The hair on his back was standing straight up. His stare never broke from the open closet. Soon after, he started to bark. Then, he laid his body on top of mine. This is another example of me being familiar with his behavior. Never, in his 7 years of life, had he ever put himself on top of me. Even if I tried to lay him on me, he would always immediately move, as if he thought he was too heavy or something. but in that moment, he was barking at my closet and laying his body on me. I was convinced something was in my room, and he was gradually getting more protective as it got closer to me. I was freaking out internally, but I stayed calm and texted my best friend as everything happened. The whole ordeal lasted about 30 minutes. The last thing I'll share happened right before we moved out. It sure as hell felt like a grand finale, too. I got home from work at 11 p.m. one night. As soon as I walked in, I noticed my roommate's door was open a few inches. They were both at work, and I knew they always left their door shut. I took my dog for a walk, and when I came back in, their door was now open halfway. My body got hot with fear, thinking someone must have broken in and is still in the apartment. I called them to see when they would be home, while I sat on a chair in the living room that was inches away from the sliding patio door. Fortunately, they were only 10 to 15 minutes away. While sitting there silent to try and hear any movement that would confirm an intruder, I heard the long vertical blinds of the patio door move as if someone had slapped them. When my head turned to the noise as a reflex, I saw the curtain to that patio door moved about 2 feet forward. This was just inches from my right arm. I knew the door was closed and locked, and I knew there was maybe 3 inches between that curtain and the glass sliding door, so it would be physically impossible for a person to be behind it. I ran outside and waited for them. We checked everywhere, and there was no intruder. I left out a few other times things had been moved around when we were gone. The activity was just constant. What's funny to me is we never considered moving out because, at the end of the day, we still liked the apartment and the neighborhood, lol. We just did our best to ignore everything. That's the end. I've always been skeptical about ghosts and the paranormal, but what happened to me in a hotel room outside Charleston, South Carolina, changed my mind. In fall 2022, I was traveling for work and ended up staying in this old colonial-style hotel. It was charming in a way, creaky floors, antique furniture, but definitely showed its age. They assigned me room 313, and though I joked about the number being unlucky, the front desk clerk didn't seem amused. The first sign something was off came that very first night. While brushing my teeth, I noticed the bathroom mirror's reflection was strange. It didn't line up perfectly with my movements. When I waved my hand, the reflection responded with a faint delay, like it was a second behind me. I thought it might just be a trick of the lighting or my tired eyes, so I ignored it. Later, at 2:39 a.m., I woke up suddenly, chilled to the bone. The heater was silent, and the room was freezing cold, far colder than I had left it. Then from the bathroom, I heard slow tapping on the mirror, like fingernails lightly drumming on glass. When the tapping stopped, I heard the faucet turn on. I was sure I had turned everything off before bed, so I got up to check. The cold water was running, and the mirror was fogged up, even though no hot water had been on. On the glass, there was a small, smudged handprint, like a child's hand. The bathroom lights flickered once, and the air felt heavy and wrong. I backed away, afraid, and stayed up the rest of the night, sitting in the chair with the main room light on until dawn. I checked out first thing in the morning. The front desk clerk didn't ask why. I think she already knew. Later, I found a review online warning others not to stay in room 313 because the mirror isn't a mirror. I'm still not sure what I experienced, but that night made me realize some things might be beyond explanation.
Thanks for tuning in. Watch another video if you dare.